So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun. Look to the future now, it's only just begun.
So as you saw yesterday, we did a best and worst of WWE video, and in this video, in the comfort of our own couch, we're going to be doing the best and worst of TNA. So this should be a very interesting video.
Because when it comes to WWE, we've said a lot of bad things over the year, a few good things, but TNA have upped their standards for this year. Let's see what this video can show, the good as well as the bad.
Yeah, I think TNA have had a very relatively good year, definitely a lot better than WWE, and I think a lot of there is a lot more choice in these, best feud, best storyline, best match. I believe there is a lot more choice in TNA, which might make it a little bit harder, and then it may be open for discussion a little bit more. But subscribe down below, like this video, comment your thoughts on our thoughts on the best and worst in TNA in 2012.
And please contact us in the links in the description box below.
So best and worst feud NJ in TNA in 2012. The year of 2012 was definitely the year of Aries, wasn't it? I think a lot of feuds in 2012, the best ones in my opinion, did involve Austin Aries going to the top, and I think Austin Aries versus Bully Ray was a 2-month program which lasted through lockdown and ended at Sacrifice, which had a very good match, but also was very interesting, the dynamic, the Bully versus, the sort of, the victim kind of storyline they did, which was good.
And the reason I was doing the CM Punk sign is because just like WWE, this is TNA, and it's going to be a year based on one wrestler, and with this Aries, this year became more progressively good for him. Yes, there's a bit of a time where other wrestlers are stepping up, but he's had many great feuds. To pick up Bully Ray, yes, that feud had a good story to it, but one against Rude was pretty good. The one against Hyde, he's actually going somewhere. So it's hard to actually pick one. But I'll say Bully Ray just because I'm a fan of him, and the fact that his Michael against Aries was good.
It was such a simple storyline about the bully, the bully versus the victim. That kind of school backyard thing, which is kind of what a lot of people could relate to. I mean, who hasn't been bullied in life? I know I personally have been bullied a lot in my life. I could relate to that kind of storyline. I just want to make a special mention here to Bobby Roode versus James Storm, which I think was it was a year-long feud. They had 2 matches, and even though it kind of ended a bit stupidly, I still think that in 2012, this was definitely a recognisable or memorable feud.
Originally, that was the one we were going to say, but I personally look at this and think, yes, it was like Rock and Cena over the year, but it didn't finish the way that it was building up to. So I think TNA ruined this for getting my personal award for this topic.
There's no doubt this year that WWE and TNA as well have done a lot of matches very repetitively, and I think one of the reasons why AJ Daniels is the worst feud of the year in my opinion was simply because of that. They faced each other so many times, and the fact that it involved Claire Lynch.
This definitely stands out as the worst for me, just because when you look at it, the fact that it could have finished in 2011 had that thing all paid off and started 2012 nicely clean, different directions. But they didn't. They repeated it, and I just thought, it's got to be the worst for me.
As soon as it involved Claire Lynch, not only did we have repeated matches and repeated people in the same segments, but it had Claire Lynch, and it just was a terrible storyline which ended prematurely, thank God. In my opinion, the worst storyline of 2012, even though it ended at lockdown, the Eric Bischoff versus Garrett Bischoff. I hated this storyline. You got a guy in Garrett Bischoff who was obviously there because of his dad, never really showed that much talent, and the fact that he got the rub off his dad and was the leader of his team of like AJ Styles, Austin Aries, etc. going into lockdown, to me just made the feud a total joke. And the fact that he's done nothing afterwards kind of shows that he has no freaking talent.
Even though I do like seeing Bischoff again, the fact that he didn't really benefit his son, it just proves that the whole build-up led to nothing. But in my opinion, it's got to go to AJ and Daniels just because that should have finished a long time ago, and these two should be putting other wrestlers over now.
Yeah, one last time at Destination X 2011, one last time at Bound for Glory 2011, and then they feuded throughout 2012 and had another match at Final Resolution, in which between that time, or Filler Resolution, and between that time they had many other matches which involved both of them in some way or capacity.
And let's see it one more time.
The best and worst storyline of the year for TNA. This is the award that not just goes to the best blood feud, but goes to the best storyline that encapsulated us the most. And I think for TNA, the Bound for Glory series was something that was very well built, and it led to something really big at Bound for Glory. I say in terms of like a a couple of month-long sort of storyline, and the way they did it and the different characters that were involved, it was definitely the best storyline of the year for TNA.
Well, this was definitely going the direction that was going to give the Bobby Roode and James Storm feud the good kick they deserved. Yes, it didn't happen, which was the negative of this series, but in the end, we got the big match and another big match, and it really felt important to TNA, and they did this really well.
And they had a lot of good matches in there as well, didn't they? A lot of people, even though we had to see AJ and Daniels again, but they had a lot of good matches in this.
Joe did really well this year.
And Joe did very well in this year's Bound for Glory series. So best storyline for TNA was definitely the Bound for Glory series. There were some other ones, like I think Bully Ray vs. Joseph Park was a good storyline. You know, Rude and Storm had its elements of being a good storyline, but that was more of a feud, really. Going into worst storyline, there have been many candidates for this, in my opinion. The Aces and Eight storyline has just crashed, even though it started strong. ODB versus Eric Young's wedding and marriage was a shitty storyline, but I think the cream of the crop has to go to Claire Lynch and that whole storyline. As soon as she got involved, the storyline just tanked.
I'm going to say the Eric Young thing, I've never really got behind Eric Young. Every time I've bashed him, someone's always said, oh, he used to be good, but he's not good anymore because he's trying to be comedy, it's not working. Bringing ODB to level, becoming the knockout tag champs, ruined everything there, so it's going to be hard for him to come back from that. And now for Claire Lynch, even though when they had the storyline of the affair thing, that was at least in some strong direction. The Claire Lynch absolutely ruined it, and then that dragged on for a while, and even the finish was absolutely rubbish. So to be honest, this goes out the window by far.
Much like WWE at their pay-per-views, I think TNA have also delivered a lot in their matches at this year's pay-per-view, and I think a lot of matches involving Austin Aries were very good matches. But I think, in my opinion, the best match in terms of storytelling, in terms of build, in terms of payoff, has to be the Bobby Roode versus James Storm match at Bound for Glory. It was the best match at Bound for Glory, and in my opinion, the best match of the year for TNA. And a close second, Austin Aries versus Bobby Roode at Destination X.
The reason I'm not really going to agree with Storm and Roode, probably as much as I want to, is the fact this was when the championship was meant to be involved, and it came to a point where it weren't. So I'm going to probably say another James Storm and Roode match where they want to continue the feud, or the Aries and Roode match, definitely. The way they did it, and the great payoff at the end for Aries to build that match.
A lot of matches involving Austin Aries, whether it was Alex Shelley, Bully Ray, whether it was Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy at Turning Point. He had a lot of good matches, but I think in terms of everything, storytelling, psychology, blood feud, etc., I think it had to be Storm versus Roode. In terms of the worst match in TNA, well, you have to go back to the first pay-per-view of the year for the TNA to look at this. Mickie James versus Gail Kim, which in theory, it main evented TNA Impact in late 2011 and was a very, very good match. And then it got to the pay-per-view and they decided to introduce the whole Velvet Touch thing, Madison Rayne in a cage above the ring, and it had a stupid DQ finish. In my opinion, that is the worst match of the year for TNA, in my opinion.
My one, again, I should have said this one when we were discussing this, is that match, yes, it had bad stipulations, but that doesn't mean the wrestling in those matches were bad. But the match that did throw me out the window was when Eric Young became the Knockout Tag Champion.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, actually. That was, it wasn't just the match, it was the fact that they actually became champions, really, that made the whole thing bad. But yeah, we've had a fair share of good matches in TNA. We really have. There seems to be a lot more of a focus on wrestling. There have been a lot of great TV matches, but the most memorable one, in my opinion, is Storm versus Roode. Definitely the best match of the year, in my personal opinion. The worst match being Mickie James and Gail Kim, in my opinion. I think it's fair to say that if we're going to be talking about best and worst wrestler in TNA, the name Austin Aries won't be far from the top of the tree when you talk about best wrestler. I think in 2012, it to me has been the year of Austin Aries. He's been the most improved by far. He's progressed up the card very well. In terms of a wrestler, he is very accomplished. In terms of a talker, he is very accomplished. He really does remind me of a CM Punk. He really does.
Aries, the way TNA made him the spotlight, made him the focus, gave him what he deserves, what he needed. I'd say that Aries definitely became the best wrestler throughout the year for many things he said, done, and achieved. So yes.
I mean, you had Bully Ray, James Storm, Bobby Roode, all fantastic wrestlers. Jeff Hardy, another good wrestler. There are many people, Kurt Angle, there are many people you could put in that category, but I think in terms of a standout character and wrestler in TNA, It's definitely had to be Austin Aries. In terms of the worst wrestler, though, there are many candidates here. I could say Eric Young because of his stupid, jokey character in the ring. I could say Robbie E because he is a complete and utter fucking joke. The cream of the crop, in my opinion, it's my opinion only, the guy who should have been an OVW, but instead, because of his father, made it to the roster, fucking Garrett Bischoff. He showed no ability in the ring whenever he came in. And in my opinion, the worst wrestler of the year, Garrett Bischoff.
If I had to add a few more, 3 more, that Jesse guy, I haven't really seen much of him, but I don't care for him. I don't really want to see him go anywhere. I could say, even though he's in a faction, Diva, I don't really get behind him as much as I used to in WWE. And the last one would be one of the gut check guys. I can't remember who he was, but he was ridiculous in the ring and not the right size for it.
Was he the one that was overweight? But the thing is, he's not on the roster. I'm talking about people on the roster. I mean, Garrett Bischoff, to me, typifies bad wrestler in TNA. It's time for us to give our opinion on the best and worst tag team in TNA. To be honest with you, I think the best tag team, because let's face it, there haven't really been that many tag teams in TNA. We've had, like, Matt Morgan and Crimson, Los Stereotypicos. You know, we've had Joey Ryan and Matt Morgan. We've had a couple of tag teams, but I think the best tag team, the standout tag team of the year has been Kaz and Daniels by far.
Other than Machine Guns coming back briefly, I'd say Kaz and Daniels pairing up together, actually giving Kazarian something important in his career, pairing up with Daniels. Daniels' great mic work. But the bad thing about it is that he's still keeping Daniels and AJ together somehow, even though he's in a tag team. But the way they perform together and on the mic together, pure gold.
A special mention here, I would have said them, but I think Kaz and Daniels have just been better over the year. Samoa Joe and Magnus, that was a really good tag team that I enjoyed. It was temporary, but it was still a very good tag team while it lasted.
For Magnus, yes, Magnus has not actually gained much from it. It was Joe giving Magnus some TV time and some exposure, so that was definitely good there.
As for worst tag team, oh god. 2 candidates for the worst tag team in TNA. We've got the Robbies, Robbie E and Robbie T. Just, for some reason, they got #1 contenderships.
The thing is, we got Robbie E out of the TV championship and put him into the tag. That was absolutely horrible. But the thing I didn't like about this is they were teasing a breakup that could have at least done something decent to this, but they went straight past it, kept them together. Bro.
But I think the candidate for the worst tag team, the Robbies, is something. But ODB and Eric Young, in my opinion, the fact they were the knockout tag champs and haven't defended their belt one bit, they've had weddings, and the fact their characters are really just stupid, especially Eric Young's, has to be why this tag team, in my opinion, has to be the worst tag team of the year in TNA.
And when I came into watching TNA, I liked ODB. She was a fighting knockout on her own. Joining force in the tag team hasn't helped her. It's probably lowered her standards in TNA. And Eric Young, I don't care.
From the comfort of our own sofa, it's time to look at the best and worst talkers. Now, I think it's fair to say that me and NJ are both pretty good at talking, but let's face it, there are a couple of guys on the roster on TNA that stand out above everyone in terms of talking. You give yours and I'll give mine.
Just because I've enjoyed him, I've enjoyed his time in the company, he's progressed, he's entertaining, he knows how to draw heat, and that's none other than Bully Ray.
In terms of reinventing his character, he has always been a pretty good, decent guy on the mic, but he's really stepped up his game in terms of his promos and the way he delivers his promos and the way he gets heat. So I'd say Bully Ray is definitely on that list. But I do think Austin Aries, in the way he speaks, is definitely a really good talker. Bully Ray and Austin Aries is a really close one there, in my opinion, as to the best talkers. They're both very good talkers. I could say James Storm was a very good talker. I really enjoyed James Storm's style of promo. I could say Bobby Roode is a very good talker. But I think Austin Aries and Bully Ray in that sense kind of stand out really in the fact that Bully Ray can really draw heat and Austin Aries is just generally really entertaining whenever he gets a mic and drops his own little version of a pipe bomb.
Good.
As for worst talker though,
we've got one here, but I'm going to say mine first. And I think, taking no disrespect for what he's done in the past, I'm going to say Taz. It's just that when he speaks, I've enjoyed him in the ring and that, but as a commentator and having to hear him speak and try and be the commentator there, not as good as I was hoping.
Mike Tenay. I've got my. I was going to say Garrett Bishop, but seeing as you brought up commentators, I think TNA's commentary team this year has been fucking awful. And you say Taz. To me, Mike Tenay has been absolutely terrible on commentary. Remember that reveal for Luke Gallows, or Doc as they call him in TNA, when he was supposed to be revealed as this big member of the Ace and Eights, and all we got was, oh, he's a guy that has travelled around the world. Instead of going, oh my God, JR Cell Job. He just sounded bored. And in terms of, and I think to be honest, it does sum up TNA in a while that we've given the commentary team the worst talker award. I was going to give it to Garrett Bischoff. I think he had an expressionless, emotionless, nothing mic talker. But the commentary team, I think, need a special mention here for being such a terrible commentary team.
I used to enjoy Taz in ECW, WWE, but in TNA, I've just not really got behind him as a commentator.
TNA have put out a lot of very good pay-per-views this year. I think there are two pay-per-views that really stand out. Slammiversary, for me, was the best pay-per-view of the year, purely because even though it was built very badly, the show felt very special. You had a lot of special moments on there. You had a couple of really good matches on there. And overall, it had the feeling to me of like TNA's version of WrestleMania, even though that is Bound for Glory. But as a whole, like 10-year celebration video, I think Slammiversary was the most entertaining. It was just to me was the best whole pay-per-view of the year.
Slammiversary does stand out as the way it should do, but just because I felt there was a lot going into this pay-per-view, I'm going to give it to none other than Destination X.
And you had Austin Aries winning the belt there, which was a fantastic moment. You had the X Division style, which we all know, so a lot of internet smarks such as ourselves really do like the style of. Destination X was a very good pay-per-view. You could put Bound for Glory in there. That was a pretty decent pay-per-view in my opinion. Not as good as Destination X or Slammiversary, but I just think, I guess the reason why I gave it to Slammiversary, Destination X had the moment of Austin Aries, but Slammiversary had a lot more of these moments, a lot more of these special returns and stuff, like James Storm, Abyss, Christian, the Hall of Fame thing, which is why I put this slightly above Destination X in my best pay-per-view of the year. What about worst pay-per-view of the year, though?
Worst? The thing is, with TNA pay-per-views, I felt that they've had, some of them had botched endings, botched matches, but the worst must be Final Resolution.
Don't you mean Filler Resolution?
Either way they wanted to call it.
It felt like a 3-hour TV show, the ending of it. It just, considering it's called Final Resolution, nothing really got resolved apart from the AJ Daniels thing, which we didn't really watch because, let's face it, no one wants to watch an AJ Daniels match for the 115th time. And Filler Resolution.
And even that didn't really help the Ace and Eight storyline. That probably kicked it off as the worst.
Yeah, so the worst, I mean, they haven't put that many bad pay-per-views on this year, but I think Final Resolution, in my opinion, was definitely the worst. And it was it was a really bad way to end the calendar year for TNA as well, really. Just like WWE, TNA have given us many great moments in 2012 and many bad moments as well, you could say. It always seems to happen in the wrestling business. Some of give us your best moment in TNA through 2012, NJ.
There's been quite a few. I could name some, but I don't want to start going to the match area. The thing that really stood out as something that, yes, it's something that it could be given to anyone who gets involved, but to bring up new talent up to the main event would be the option C choice. Yeah, and I think in terms of a moment, in my opinion, Austin Aries winning the belt at Destination X was definitely a moment which made me mark out. I mean, let's face it, you don't get many mark out moments from a current day wrestling product, and that really did give it. In terms of another good moment for me personally, the England shows, the shows where they went to Wembley Arena, that was a really great moment for TNA when they actually expanded into England and actually did 2 tape shows there, so that was another good moment. Bad moment. Let me tell you something, Dan.
Oh.
I've got bad news before we go on any further.
What's that?
I'm pregnant with your baby. I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm going to bring it on at the bad moment, Dan.
Why do you have to mention this in public? Why are we mentioning this storyline in public? The Claire Lynch storyline was clearly the worst moment. The Claire Lynch debut. Remember how bad that promo was? The Claire Lynch debut on TNA? Oh, God, that was awful.
And it only got worse because there's like an AJ involved. It made the Daniels and AJ feud even worse. There was seriously nothing to this.
What about the moment when ODB and Eric Young got married? And not to mention the fact that Garrett Bischoff covered his dad in shit.
The ODB thing, some people say, oh, at least you got to see ODB strip. And as for the get rid of the trash, The way they took up Bishop from WWE, out with the trash. Now, in this one, it was out with the cubicle.
The bro-off.
Oh.
That was another candidate for the worst moment of the year. So rather than just skeeving about this, let's just move on to best and worst title reign of the year for TNA. So the best title reign of 2012 in TNA, I think, has to go to Bobby Roode in the sense that it was an 8-month title reign. I'd love to say Austin Aries because he had a really long reign with the belt. Gail Kim had a really long reign with the belt. But out of all of those, I think it has to go to Bobby Roode for best title reign.
I'm definitely going to give it to Bobby Roode. The reason why I would probably pushed it further with Bobby Roode is if he actually had that proper payoff against Storm, where Storm became the champion. That would have been a proper Bobby Roode run with the championship. But when he was the champion, behind it, loved his promos, loved his work. It was just really good. I think TNA did good with Bobby Roode's character then.
I think Austin Aries' reign as X Division champion was really good. Even though the X Division was clearly too low for Austin Aries, I could even argue his title reign was interesting, just because you never thought that a guy like Austin Aries would win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. But the best title reign of the year, I think, has to go to Bobby Roode. Worst title reign, though, I think has to involve the TV title. Let's face it, there hasn't really been much interesting with the TV title since 2012. And I think the worst title reign, the most annoying title reign, has been Robbie E. Just terrible.
Knockout tags, flipping, shoot them, get rid of them.
They never even defended.
That's the thing. They teased getting rid of the belts, taking them off them, getting rid of them, but it never happened. So the stupid knockout tag.
The ODB Eric Young knockout tag championship run has been awful. They haven't even defended it. They haven't even lost the title yet. But Robbie E, Devon, whoever won that TV title from that point, was awful in my opinion as well. So much like WWE, in TNA we've seen a lot of new faces. Like, obviously some of them have been masked, but we've had a lot of new faces come into the company, and it's now time for us to give our best newcomer of the year. Who is your best newcomer of the year? The newest face on the roster which you've been most entertained by or got behind the most?
The one I had before, and I'll explain that before I tell you my new one. I had Doc, because out of all the Ace and Eights members so far, he's the one who stood out with the most damage and most potential to go somewhere. But that got replaced by Joey Ryan just because of the way he was brought in, the surprise exit, the bring back, and the fact that he has the look that people are behind.
Indeed, and he has an interesting character as well. And I think the whole gut check thing has been a good way to bring in some new talents. It's just a shame that they've kind of gone off board with the gut check a little bit. For me personally, though, the best newcomer of the year, not necessarily a newcomer, but it's a new character, and that is none other than Joseph Park. I've been really entertained by the evolution of Joseph Park, and I just have to say, I've just really loved watching the Joseph Park character, and it's just given me something different in wrestling. We're seeing a guy who isn't really a wrestler, but he's managing to make not being a wrestler entertaining to a guy like me who really likes wrestling over non-wrestlers wrestling.
I personally went for the Abyss character to come back, so I'm looking forward to seeing that storyline, but Joseph Parks has been different.
What about worst newcomer of the year? Garrett Bischoff was in 2011, so we can't really do that. Jesse Goddard, remember the lack of reaction he got at Bound for Glory 2012? That makes him a candidate.
Tara really brought it up as someone special, something big, and no one really knew who he was, and it just really didn't work out. But the thing I want to mention, as much as I do enjoy their backstage attacks and promos, it's just that when it comes to wrestling, they're not really doing much for me. There's none than the Ace and Eights.
The Aces and Eights faction started off really strong, and TNA have really fucked that one in the pan. It's got to the point now where we once modelled skits with Terminator NJ on the Ace and Eights. Now it's just like, why bother? Because the faction and the storyline, quite frankly, is going nowhere. I personally think worst newcomer of the year is Jesse Goddard, but Aces and Eights, I completely understand why that might get worst newcomer, simply because of where the storyline's gone and where that's taken the faction.
If I had to pick a certain newcomer, not because he's been in the wrestling business before, but it'll be Devon. The way they brought him in was bad.
So now it's time for the final award for Best and Worst Promo of 2012. And to me, NJ, two promos stand out for TNA, and both of them were on go-home shows to TNA's two biggest pay-per-views of the year. The first one being Bobby Roode versus James Storm pre-lockdown promo, which was just showed everything you needed to about that feud and got me really into that lockdown match they had.
And that's the thing that stands out to me, just because you had James Storm, who was really ready to face Bobby Roode. The only downfall was he mentioned the title and he didn't really get to go for it properly. But the way that James Storm made it feel heartwarming, Roode bring up the family strongly, it was really nicely done and really made you want to see James Storm beat Roode.
Just Austin Aries' work shoot promo on Jeff Hardy come at a time when the interest in Aries versus Hardy they didn't really do that much to really put heat on the feud. But when Aries did that work shoot promo talking about how TNA have always favoured him more and how he's, this and that, it kind of reminded me of CM Punk's work shoot promo in July 2011. So I think that is another candidate for best promo of the year for TNA.
That does stand out because you're letting Aries do what he does best, just like Punk. So I say Aries definitely free mic talk was great, but I just say the fact is the whole year build and they had history to build up with each other, Roode and Storm.
As for worst promo of the year, now I may just be saying this because I've only just seen it and it stands out in my memory of other bad promos that have happened. The bro-off. It's not that the delivery was bad or the promo itself was bad. It's just that bro-off encapsulated everything that I hate about pro wrestling right now.
It's really, they with TNA, they do try and target the audience with their own characters. It's pretty stupid. I've never really liked them. There's no reason to really like them. But the thing that stands out to me, even though he's the icon, or not the actual icon, he's one who's running the show right now. Hogan's cut some pretty bad promos over this time.
It's on the England show, wasn't it, with Garrett Bischoff?
That is one of them. That's one of the ones I'm going to give. There's others that are not coming to me right now, but when he puts over someone that even the audience didn't really care about, it really didn't help him at all.
Generally, Hogan isn't very good at putting other people over. He's always been very good at putting over himself. I think the person he's put over best would either be Bobby Roode or Austin Aries. But what about the ODB Eric Young marriage promo segment? I never was into that either.
No, that didn't really work out, and it just doesn't feel like it's something that people want to see. When you pair these two and go all the way to marriage, it is ridiculous.
Now, I can see why people might want to see this. It is like more of a casual fan thing, and it did pop a rating, but the fact that it was on the go-home show to TNA's second biggest pay-per-view of the year in the hour main event slot, just, again, priorities.
If I had to throw one more in, Claire Lynch talked to AJ about how she is the mother of AJ's baby and all this rubbish.
Baby, AJ! I know, that was also a terrible promo. So many bad promos. What's the pick of the bunch for you? Claire Lynch?
Claire Lynch.
Claire Lynch. So I hope you guys were as comfortable throughout this video as we were, as we ran down some of the best and some of the worst in TNA this year. All the the stuff we talked about, all the awards we give, etc. The best and the worst will be links in the description box down below for you. It's been a great video. It's been a great year. It will soon be our 2-year anniversary on January the 14th. Who knows what we're going to be doing for that? But it has been a very interesting 2012, not just for WWE, but also for TNA as we sit here on New Year's Eve, talking about these kind of things, looking back at 2012.
And now, people, hope that you have a happy new year. Make the most of your night. Make sure you leave your comments to our categories in the comment section below. I'm now going to go drink a martini. And until next time, YouTubers, goodbye.